welcome everyone to another awesome video from Twisted Dice. I'm Darren, and today been joined by Ace himself. And if you are on the tournament scene, that you know that Mr. Ace here is a massive, great Tyranid fan, a very good advocate of the four-armed Emperor himself.
This is true.
I know that's more like the Genestealer cult, but the Tyranids are the ones that created the Genestealer cult, which I'm an avid fan of. And you were in the forefront. You're you like the boys that led the way for the Genestealer cult, the ones that infected everything else. But today, But today we're going to be talking all about a Pacific faction. So we're not going to cover everything with the Genestealers, Tyranids. Sorry. We're going to talk about more about a Pacific one, which is going to be the Kraken itself. So this is going to be some really interesting stuff. So this is more John's forte on this one, so it's going to be really cool because we're going to learn together on some of the cool, awesome background of the Tyranids. And boy, there's some real juicy stuff on it. And like the Tyranids themselves are really cool on the battlefield. You know, you can have some really stunning armies. And yourself, John, you've got like a really beautiful Tyranid army itself, which is more of a custom colour scheme, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's always nice. I think a general tip for anybody that's starting up with an army, unless you're so dedicated that you specifically want to go with a colour scheme, then I think always a good idea is to go for something that is your custom colour scheme, because that way it means that you can use it for whatever you like. It gives you a lot more flexibility on the battlefield, and it also gives you a lot more creative license. So that's kind of what I've tended to do with pretty much any army that I've gone for through the years, and the Tyranids were the first thing to do that with. And actually, I started off with Kraken. So originally, my Tyranid Hive fleet was Kraken, and I painted it in the classic Kraken colour scheme. So it did all kind of come from that originally.
And that's awesome. You know, absolutely awesome. Now what colours would you say that the Kraken were, the original form of the Krakens?
So Kraken, very, very classic bone skin, and a red carapace is your, and it's a kind of a deep red carapace is your classic Kraken scheme, and that bone coloured skin can kind of be different tones. I've seen some that are quite dark, others that are really quite white, but it's kind of a creamy bone coloured skin, and then that really kind of beautiful deep red with highlights. It's a lovely eye-catching scheme, really, really distinguishable as Kraken.
That's it. If it's painted beautifully, that is one hell of an army that stands out really, really nicely on the battlefield. I wouldn't say like super bright, but it's definitely out of the Tyranid forms. It's one that will definitely catch your eye as you're walking across the tabletops. There, you definitely can see them. So let's start from let's go in with the fluff now. Let's start with the fluff. Let's talk from.
Makes sense.
Let's start from the beginning. Do we even know how the Tyranids come into to be what they are?
We don't know the absolute origins of Tyranids as such. All that we know is that they are not from this galaxy, and they are a form of Xenos creature that's all bio engineered. So they don't have anything that is metal, plastic, and they don't deal with anything that isn't flesh and bio substance. That's the only thing that they're all made up, no matter what it is within the Tyranids, they're all made up of this biomatter. That's kind of what they're made from. We know that they are an organism that is purely designed or bred, if you like, just to survive, consume, and to grow. That's the only. It doesn't have. There's no personality. There's no desire. There's no grand plan. Literally, all they are designed to do is to consume and to grow, and that is part of the whole fear factor that comes with Tyranids. Is they have no fear. They have no feelings. They literally just want to absorb that biomatter grow and get bigger and bigger. And so that's where they kind of came from. They were originally, Tyranids were first discovered by astropaths, and this was sort of midway. They're thought of as quite a new army, if you like, or a new kind of force. They weren't discovered until midway through the 41st millennium. Even though there are people that said that they were around in the 35th millennium, but that's all more kind of like rumours as far as the fluff goes. But they were kind of discovered midway through the 41st millennium. They were discovered with the Hive fleet Behemoth, which was the first Hive fleet that the Imperium came across. And the interesting thing so we will just touch on this because it very much leads on to Kraken. So Behemoth, they came through as one tendril. So whenever a Tyranids kind of come through into the galaxy, or they make their ascension, they're always thought of as a tendril. That's kind of how they move and how they travel.
Okay.
And Behemoth come through as this one tendril, and they move. So the way Tyranids move in space is they don't have faster than light travel as such, so they don't use the warp. But what they do is they create these almost black holes in reality, which allows them to move really, really quickly. But these kind of black holes, these kind of disturbances in the galaxies and in matter, they take a long time for the Tyranid fleet to create. So and they kind of almost have like an entrance and an exit. And it's one of the kind of the flaws, if you like, in the grand plan is if people can spot where they're coming from, it takes a while for them to move through there. But when they start to move, they obviously move quickly, and it is pretty much as quick as faster than light travel, as warp speed. But in between them creating those almost black holes, they're actually one of the slowest types of kind of race. They move fairly slowly, but Behemoth came through first. They came through first with this tendril. They were, I think, eastern fringes is where they came through. They came through as one tendril, and they came into it was ultramarines kind of space was basically where they came through at. They destroyed and took over, not took over, but obliterated a load of worlds around the eastern fringe before the ultramarines actually spotted them. And that was the first Tyrannic war, where they obliterated a huge amount of the ultramarines, but slowly but surely Marnus Calgar fought them off and pretty much obliterated the whole of Hive Fleet Behemoth. And that was the first time that the Imperium had ever seen the Tyranids. So at that point, they had garrisoned and strengthened all these kind of home worlds, and they'd put all their kind of governments and organisations and that all over the place around these kind of fringes, and nothing happened after that. So there was like loads and loads of years passed after that. And then within these worlds, within these like Hive worlds and what have you, there was lots of like talk about we don't need these military outposts. You know, there's nothing happening. There was loads of kind of like bickering and loads of people. But what we didn't know at that stage is a lot of that bickering and a lot of that unrest was in fact the hive mind that left its kind of beacons behind. And the first signs of the Gene Stealer cult that were infesting and sending out their kind of disruption into the world and taking over the kind of the government and the infrastructure of these worlds. And slowly but surely, they managed to convince a lot of the Ultramarines and the government within those kind of planetary systems to kind of back off and to reduce all their military forces from it.
Which is kind of stupid, right? But this is what the cult does. This is how the cult manipulate these worlds, and this
Exactly.
is like the bonkers thing about the whole thing.
It's super, super cool. So yeah, so obviously at that point they had no idea what was going on, but there was one. I think it's So the planetary system was called Icar 4, I believe, and particularly on this one, which was there, it was a very, very key, prominent kind of almost like shipping sort of lane, I suppose, where it was very, very tactical, had a lot of significance. So within this, there was this movement, and it was called the Brotherhood. and nobody did. They just thought it was kind of like cultists. They didn't realise that it was anything suspicious. But there was this kind of uprising of what was called the Brotherhood, and they started creating this huge cathedral. And they were starting to convince the locals that at that point, and it was all not innocence, because nothing's innocent within the 41st millennium.
No, hell no.
But they were convincing the locals of the system that the emperor was going to return, that he was going to return to save them all, and there was going to be a second coming of the emperor. Now, obviously, what they were preaching was the four-armed emperor, but at that stage, nobody knew that.
So they weren't lying.
They weren't exactly. They weren't lying.
That's the thing. They weren't lying. They weren't telling any porkies. The emperor was coming for them. Exactly. It's just not the emperor they desired.
Not the emperor they decided. But while this was happening, so underneath this, and this is like, you get this amazing kind of narrative. So under this great big cathedral was actually this huge infestation of gene stealers that had slowly but surely amassed with their patriarch. And kind of a neophytes doing their jobs and kind of strengthening things and disrupting the system and causing loads and loads of issues until kind of eventually kind of almost civil war broke out. The the local police and inquisitors were starting to get involved and thinking something was going on, and they were starting to shut off all communications to the outside world, and they were trying to get messages then to the Ultramarines to sort of say, look, something's going on here, something's going down, it's all starting to go to pot. But because obviously they persuaded people to kind of go away from it, they were a long way away from any kind of real military force. So it was very much then the uprising started to happen. They started to fight these kind of almost like rebels started to take over the world for this kind of brotherhood until eventually the Ultramarines did turn up. And they made kind of planetfall with their like kind of drop pods and stuff like that. And they fought their way through to this kind of cathedral. And they talk about this is the first company as well, and this is the first company, Terminator company, that actually went into this cathedral. Like you can imagine, this massive, big old group of Terminators fought their way down to, and they found like under the kind of the altar, like this kind of grand entrance to this underground kind of hive. They fought their way through like legions of gene stealers, which I think they killed like half of the Terminators, until eventually they found the patriarch, and he's kind of like sitting there, kind of on his throne. There's a huge, great big fight, and there's the librarians there as well. He gets involved. He manages to kind of like disappear and then reappear right by the patriarch, have a big old battle, and eventually they do kill off the patriarch, and they take hold of the whole planet. But what happened in the meantime is the signals had already been going back to the Hive fleet, and at this point they thought it was obviously maybe potentially Behemoth, but actually it was Kraken, which was the new Hive fleet that was kind of coming forward. So the beacons were already going out, and obviously all the disruption and the defences had already been lowered by years and years of kind of calculating, planning, and unrest. And also there'd been some disruption to the, some key elements of the command force within the Ultramarines as well, which was really, really kind of cool. And one of the interesting things as well is the kind of lead governor, who was nobody obviously knew at that point, but he was a magus, and they never found the magus. So they wiped out everybody. They thought they wiped out everybody completely, to a man, and there was no gene stealers anywhere, and everything was all gone. But they never found the body of this governor or this magus.
So the Majors played him nicely.
Played him nicely. So what the Majors was actually, he was still underground, and he was still creating more gene stealers. So there was still like this absolute huge, great big amassed force of gene stealers and lictors that were then almost sitting in silence underneath this huge, great, important world. So by then, this point, this is when Kraken arrives. So now they're in the system, and they've already, because this world sort of this system's not communicating really very much with the Imperium because it's not thought particularly important. This is before the Ultramarines have kind of realised, hang on a minute, there's something we've missed here. So by that point, Kraken is already starting to. The shadow and the warp is very much in effect, and the system's starting to be silenced by that, and the gene stealer tendrils, the Tyranid tendrils, are already taking over worlds and absorbing their biomass, destroying them, and slowly but surely getting closer and closer to kind of more key assets. And then eventually they manage to kind of get through to the more key places, and that's when the Ultramarines see what's going on, and then it just it goes down in a big way. There's huge fighting. There's Ultramarines lose masses of casualties. The Tyranids Kraken starts bringing down all its forces, and then what happens is all the gene stealers from Ikar 4 that they thought were all dead start coming up as well. So and then they start fighting sort of fiercer and nastier than ever, and there's just a huge, great big war goes on. Eventually, the Ultramarines do manage to kind of fight them off, but after I think they lose like a quarter of the whole of the Ultramarines, which is like one of the biggest chapters for this huge, humongous big battle. And the only reason why they do manage to win is because not only on that eastern front are Kraken coming through, but one of the main reasons why Kraken are called Kraken. So what's a Kraken, Sarah?
Kraken is the beast that's underwater for the.
That's right. Big octopus thing, right?
That's it.
So the reason why Kraken's called Kraken is because the way that it fights, or the way that it fought, which surprised everybody, is where Behemoth came through as one tendril, Kraken came through as loads of little splinter fleets and splinter tendrils. So it's kind of got that image of the Kraken, if you like.
Sure.
And one of its big tendrils, while this fighting was going on, was also coming through into Eldar real space. And Leanden was also kind of situated not too far away, if you like. And their rangers spotted that also one of the tendrils was coming through towards their world as well. And long story short, they basically came through there and they almost obliterated half of Leanden at the same time. Leanden had to pretty much use all its stole zones to kind of resurrect all of the Wraith constructs to try and fight off the Tyranids, because otherwise they would have lost that whole world. They would have lost that whole craft world. And they were only saved, in fact, by the fact that Prince Uriel, who was expelled from the Eldar race from Leanden because he was basically a bit of a rebel and a bit of a cowboy. And so he was basically he was expelled, and he was doing his kind of raiding, if you like. He became like a corsage with kind of raiders, and he was like a pirate basically.
Sure.
And he ditched his home force. But when he heard and he realised that it was under big strain of being completely obliterated, he flew back into real space through the webway and came in and basically saved the day as well and helped them fought them back. But the real scary thing is that what they sort of said is the kind of the end of the story, if you like, is that basically the only reason why Kraken didn't basically take over the whole of the Eastern Front was the fact that it had to fight two humongous armies at the same time. So even though they didn't even know it, both the Ultramarines and the Eldar were almost kind of working together, because if they had either one had managed to lose and Kraken had gone through, they would have absorbed that biomatter, and they would have been even more, formidable and even more frightening. So that's kind of the story of Kraken. So they were the second Hive fleet to come through, very much known for being fast, like really speedy and sneaky, known for their, just to come through on many fronts. So really scary, cool story. So that's
the thing. So on the battlefield themselves, their traits on the battlefield is they are a fast-moving army. And they got that ability to get across the tabletop quite quickly. So fluff-wise, like what you've just said, it kind of like they kind of do go together, and they kind of do make sense on why they've got their abilities they've got.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, really, really cool, really cool narrative. And again, kind of the Imperium being daft as anything, and we won't go carry on because there's a load. I mean, I could talk all day just on Tyranids, but obviously they thought at this point when they fought off Kraken, they were like, right, okay, so we got rid of Behemoth. That was just the vanguard for Kraken. And actually, both of them were just vanguards for what was to come, which was going to be the biggest, which was Leviathan, that came a lot later and is still causing trouble. And Kraken is still causing trouble as well, but Kraken very much after that became very much splinter cells. So there's loads of Hive fleets that have born out of Kraken, which became so big within their splinters that have become Hive fleets themselves. So I think there's I can't remember what it's called now, Macedon, I think, or something. Hive Fleet Macedon, I think, is the name of it. Is now a really big Hive Fleet that's come out of Kraken. So Kraken's kind of splintered off into lots of things. Yeah.
Okay, so the Kraken, what draws the Kraken to these planets? Do we know?
The Gene Stealer cult is what ultimately does. So, well, there's a bigger piece. So and apologies, guys, if you can hear my dog barking in the background. The dog's obviously wants dinner at the moment, so apologies. So hopefully that's not annoying you too much. But anyway, back to this. So originally, the reason why they think Tyranids have come to this galaxy is the Emperor, because they believe that the beacon in Terra, where the Emperor basically uses his psychic ability to basically to do travel, doesn't he? So basically almost like the what's the word?
So he's the beacon that the astropaths use to navigate their way through the warp space.
Exactly. So what the fluff is that beacon is so strong that those pulses of energy and of warp energy have kind of got to the Tyranids in other galaxies, if you like, over the period of time, and that has attracted them to our galaxy. So that's why they're coming this way, because of the Emperor, because it's all the Emperor's fault, obviously.
No one likes the dead Emperor, right?
No one likes the dead Emperor on his.
The Emperor's light is causing more trouble than it's worth.
That's right. But the actual individual Hive fleets and the reasons why they go towards certain worlds is because what happens is they either in the case of Kraken with Behemoth, Behemoth had left seeds when it got forced back, then brought in other ships. But what they also do is they send out these vanguard small kind of alien vessels that they kind of literally just float into the galaxy, into systems, and then they let out these kind of gene stealers, and the gene stealers and lictors then infiltrate into the civilizations, and what they'll do is they will just they basically reconnaissance. They don't kill people particularly. They'll just do what they need to do to survive. They stay low key. They gather information. They absorb kind of what's going on. And because of the way that Tyranids are psychically linked, they can then communicate that back to the Hive fleet. And then if the planet's right for the taking, they'll pretty much straight away they'll send the pulses back to say, we're ready. And then the Hive fleet will come in on that signal to take that world. If the gene stealers and the lictors feel that there's work to be done and that it's not ready to make planetfall, then what they'll do is they will then put the wheels in motion for gene stealer cult. So what they'll do then is they'll start to infect and to start to bring in sort of the kind of their seeds into the civilization, which will slowly over a period of time. Either they can do lots of different things, so they can either just kind of take down defenses by just causing confusion, or otherwise they can take hold of whole of worlds if they can make an uprising that's strong enough. So they can do lots of different things. The gene stealer cult works in loads of different ways. Sometimes it's not strong enough in itself to be able to take over or to cause any issue, but what it will do is it will just slowly but surely kind of gain a force within that world. That's whether it's kind of like a mining force or whatever it is. that slowly but surely it's gathering weapons and materials. So then when the Hive fleet does come, they're ready to kind of help to kind of bring down that world first. And then that's kind of where it is, and there has been times where the Genestealer cult will literally almost take over almost 3/4 of the world, and then it's so in that state of complete control by the Genestealer cult. Then what they'll do is they will almost like zombify. So when the Tyranids make planetfall, they just stand there, literally just stand there, ready to be absorbed, and just to walk straight into the pits to be absorbed, the bio pits, and that's really, really cool.
That's the interesting thing about it, isn't it? Because you've got all the Tyranids, even when the Tyranids are finished fighting, they all go back into those pits. It's not like, the Hive Tyrant or the little rippers.
Bio-Titan will still go in there. Yeah, everything just jumps back into the pits, which is crazy. But
which is bonkers, right? So it self cannibalizes itself. It's a weird thing, right?
It's crazy though. Like, so they'll because what they do is when they first come down, they almost like plant these kind of biological seeds that form these huge, great big capillary towers. And the capillary towers, they rise up so high, they come out of the atmosphere, and then the ships then connect to them, which then sucks the material from the actual pits. And so you have like these vats, these digestion pits, which everything's going into, and then that's sucked up through the capillary towers, which is then connected to the tendrils from the big ships, and then is all congested in, which then goes back to the Norm Queen. And the Norm Queen is kind of like the big mother bug. She sits in the biggest ship, and she births all the creatures and creates all the biomass, and that's kind of her job. She's big queen bug. And then but literally
so
everything
goes
into
above that queen bug, right?
Well, that's the thing that nobody knows. That's the bit that nobody knows, because they talk of the hive mind, and the hive mind is just wording for the fact that everything's interlinked and has a role, and that's the whole scariest thing about Tyranids, is that nobody knows. And that I think that's the bit that I find most kind of cool and exciting about it.
Like, if this was the case that the Kraken were coming to planetfall, you've then got a splinter. You've got a squad of Marines that's doing really, really well. They've managed to break through, and there's a key critical point that the Tyranids are going to come to. Like, was it Helium Rain? Have you listened to that one?
Yeah.
Like, you've got that awesome bit where you've got some scouts coming through the hallway, and there's a couple of Genestealers that looking around, and in the centre you've got like what is it? I think it was like a Morlock or something. It's in the middle of the centre of this building, setting off the detonations, and everything's all planned. But because of the hive mind, I suppose, as soon as they start fighting one, the rest of the whole hive know what's happening. So there's and that is quite scary, because how can you fight something that if you kill one thing over there, you can't be sneaky, because as soon as you sneakily kill a Genestealer over here, the whole rest of it's like, oh.
Yeah,
that's on the planet.
It's all interlinked, which is crazy. And then every time they kill one of these or fight back one of these kind of hive fleets, like, no one really knows, because it's kind of like it is all one big thing. They reckon that it's just one race that is all kind of part and parcel of the same thing. They just name them hive fleets because that's when a particular hive fleet comes through. But basically, it's just all one thing. And every time one of these hive fleets gets kind of fought back, they're like, oh, well, that was the main one. And then that finds out that's only a fraction of the next one. It's kind of this impending doom for the galaxy that actually, if something bigger comes through, there's just no way anyone can fight it off. This is something they're just completely unkillable, because as soon as they die, they just learn more. They absorb that biomass, and every time they kill something, so if they kill a space marine, they gain all the space marines' memories, thoughts, ideas, intelligence, plans, and that's all absorbed into the hive mind.
Is that, do they take the bodies back to the pits?
It's when they break them down. As they break them down, they also, when they break down the matter, they also break down that subconscious and that kind of memory as well, because of their kind of their sort of psychic ability. Wow. Because nobody really understands their psychic ability either, because they don't use the warp. People always sort of think of it as, but it isn't. It's their own kind of energy that's built up from their kind of like their biomass and the whole way they're built.
They call it the shadow in the warp, don't they?
So the shadow and the warp is exactly that. So the shadow and the warp is their energy, if you like, that becomes so smog-like that it's so powerful, and because it's separate from the warp and it's not warp energy, it actually blocks out warp energy, so you can't navigate through it, you can't communicate through it. It just literally, it's like a communication breakdown is what the shadow does, and it's just quite a scary thing within itself. So it's kind of like there's so much uncertainty and unknown about the Tyranid race, which makes it super, super scary, that it just learns, it gets stronger, it gets better, it just wrecks. It's very, very cool.
So as soon as they've cleared that planet of the biomass, so we now know that the mothership itself doesn't actually make planetfall. It's just the towers that come up from the ground up and then link into the actual mothership itself. So I was kind of thinking, like, if they are a slow force, if that big mothership did hit planetfall, how would it get back off the ground?
It doesn't. Just floats. Just a constant float. That's what it does. Yeah, it's strange. I mean, that's the weird thing with them. Well, not the weird thing, but probably the only saving grace from Tyranids is that they are not quick. This force is like a slow, steady, impending doom. It's something that, like, their only ability is to try and hide what they're doing with the shadow, and to be able to kind of slowly but surely pick off everything they go past, and shroud it in darkness so things can't see what's coming. That's all around their tactic. Their tactic, if you like, even though it's not their tactic, it's just their built-in kind of their nature. Is that's what they do. So the only way they can survive is by, whether it be the Gene Stealer cult or whoever it is, it's that hiding what they're doing. So no one's got warning where they're coming from, what they're doing. It's all that kind of that shrouded in darkness because of the way that they slowly but surely plod along, just destroy everything in their wake.
So did it like the Hive Tyrants, like when they fought, they've done what they've needed to on the planet, and they go back into these pits and they dissolve? Do those same Hive Tyrants come back, or is it
completely different?
Just completely different, fresh Hive Tyrant.
Yeah, same as the Swarm Lord. So the Swarm Lord is this alpha Hive Tyrant, but all he is basically a manifestation of exactly what the Hive fleet needs. So he's like that alpha predator. So he's kind of like, right, okay, so the Hive fleet, almost the communications and the buzzers go back to the Norm Queen, that there's this like hero of the Imperium. So like, if you take it from like the Blood Angels, I know we're talking Kraken, but if you talk about Leviathan with so Dante's on the field of play, and he's just like carving up Carnifexes and anything he gets his hands on, like there's no tomorrow. Well, the Hive fleet, the Queen, then goes, we need something that's better. We can now see what they're doing and how he's fighting. So now we're sending a Swarm Lord. So it's kind of like they're all different, but they're the same because they're learning every time what works and what's better and what doesn't work. So if something works extremely well, the Norm Queen will create something that's identical. And because all of the feelings, like they're one connected organism, so every single Tyranid has the same consciousness, so they all know the same things because they're being fed the same information or the information that they need. So that Hive Tyrant can have exactly the same information, exactly the same experience, exactly the same know-how as one that jumped in the vat, like Planet 4.
Sure. Okay. So really, it's more the Nor Queen that's the one that's, I suppose, in a way, it's kind of like she's the one that controls everything. So maybe it's, I don't know, like little robots.
Yeah.
In a way, not like bio robots. That she's the one that's just controlling, the whole thing. So she's really good at multitasking.
She is. Oh, no, bloody airbrush. Come on, we'll have to cut that bit out, Darren.
Okay, so short little break there.
Short little break, yeah. So the thing with the Norm Queen is, yes, she is, but she, even though she is the queen because she's just creating. So she's obviously a hugely important bit because she's the only one that can create these new things. So she's obviously hugely important. She's not the one, and the interesting thing is that's why no one really knows is her job is not necessarily she's not the brain bug. She's the producing bug, and she's sending those messages everywhere. But nobody really knows where that overall message comes from. That hive mind, where is the origin? What is actually delivering that? That's the thing.
So where does this
Is
biomass
weird.
go to? Like, is it
Her
just a case of it just stays onto that ship,
vessel.
and does that ship go anywhere with that biomass, or is it?
Yeah, so it stays on there. Obviously, the other ships that are in the fleet are all kind of connected through the tendrils and what have you, and they can be replenished through the same kind of channels, through the tendrils, through the links. But yeah, so what happens though? As soon as they've drained a planet, they're already starting to, because they already know now where they're going next, because they're kind of almost like the signals in the next place. So they're already starting to produce new Tyranids for what they're going to do next. So as soon as the biomass is exhausted, that's like they're starting to make them again. So if anything, the time to hit a Tyranid fleet is in between the time where they've had their war and they've fought and they've killed a planet, but they haven't had a chance to recreate their army.
Sure.
That's the time to hit them when you can, if you can, quick enough. But the Norm Queen, she works pretty quick. So you got to go quickly. But yeah, it's scary though, because they take everything. So once the planet's like vegetation and animals and everything's all killed and absorbed, then they take out all the planet nutrients within the kind of the rock and everything. They start to absorb that, and then they absorb all the water. So they all the water from the planet goes, and then after that they actually take the atmosphere as well. So they drink up the atmosphere. So when they leave a planet, it's literally just a ball of rock. It's completely useless. Can't be used for anything. Scary stuff.
Crazy stuff, right? Yeah. And that's when you start finding all the Necron tombs, just like underneath all the rock. It's like, okay, that's where they've been hiding for the last couple of millennia. That's just crazy stuff, man. So. I forgot what I was going to say now. That's not good. So is there any main characters in any of the Genestealer Sorry, is there any main characters in the Tyranid Codex? Do we have any like name characters? Because like I remember back in 5th edition, you had to have the Doom of Malantai, and he was a actual name character.
So they have so basically the named characters are all named from like almost, whether it be Eldar or whether it be Imperium, kind of like legend. So it's kind of their name that they've given something that was particularly difficult to deal with. So so you had, like you said, you had the Doom Malantai, was just a particularly powerful zoanthrope. And he basically just and the reason why it's called the Doom Malantai is because that's what he did. So Malantai was a Eldar. I don't know whether it was a Craftwell, but an Eldar something or other. Maybe a small splinter Craftwell. I don't really know Eldar that well, exactly how it works. But basically, it's an Eldar thing. And he's named after the fact that that's what he did. He doomed Malantai because he basically they fought back all the Tyranids. The Tyranids all disappeared. They thought they'd won. They settled back down, and this one big brain bug basically then just appeared and just completely wiped out almost like the entire world on its own. And then just disappeared. So it was kind of like it's like legend. It's just legend. And that's a lot of what the Tyranids kind of characters are around. They're all around legend. So the Swarm Lord was called the Swarm Lord because the Imperium has to justify it as some kind of character. But what it is just this like 5 times the size Hive tyrant that happened to be a match for anybody. So he becomes like the Swarm Lord. The same with Death Leaper. So Death Leaper is another character. Again, he's the kind of like a legend.
So the Tyranids themselves don't actually name the characters' names. Don't actually come from the Tyranids themselves. It's the fractions that are fighting them are the ones that actually name the characters. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I always thought it was like maybe the hive mind that, because there is times in the fluff. I think it's like Heart Rage, or I can't remember the name of the book now, but it's like a Space Hulk where you got like the what are they called? the ones that Sean likes to paint but never really painted properly.
Ultramarines and some
No, yeah, well,
Death
he
Watch.
never really Death Watch. That's it, Death Watch. So you got the Death Watcher attacking this shit, this vessel,
Yeah.
and then like you've got the Tyranids in there, but they've actually got one of the characters, and he's like controlling him. So it's kind of like out of like Independence Day, where the aliens got his like tendrils wrapped around his throat, and they're talking through him, and they're talking through to the to the space marine. And they're telling him like this is what the plans are in that. So I just thought maybe it's like a case of something like that you got one of these Tyranids or one of the bugs have got all of one of them and they're talking through them and saying look this is this is that. But I'm guessing
they're much more. They're much more simple than that. But I mean, the what you get is almost self-programmed, and it's all part and parcel of just the way that like it's just all part of like their nature, just to design to do one thing and one thing only. But the Gene Stealers and the obviously like the Brood Lord and Lictors are, when they're created with the ability to make their own decisions and to be able to act freely outside of the strength of the hive mind. So they have very weak context
Sure.
back to the hive mind. So they gain a little bit of personality, I suppose, through the fact that they have free will of what they're doing while they're achieving their goal. But then as soon as they get within range of the hive fleet, the strength of the hive mind then takes over, and they lose freedom to make their own decisions, and then they become back to type, which is do whatever they're told to do. So they're purposely they're designed to be able to act freely for a certain use. So everything is designed for that pure. It's all part of the process. So So it's pretty cool.
It's kind of like a paper bag, really, where you've got a one-time use.
Exactly.
And then you just like disposable stuff.
That's the Tyranids, yeah.
If you look at like Dawn of War, like as I think pretty much loads of people have played the game Dawn of War.
Yeah.
And you've got like if you play the Tyranids in the campaign, you've got you'd use like a Hive Tyrant and all the way through the game, and he will go back into the bio pits, de-dissolve, and then he will come back and like. But as the story goes in the game, it's kind of like, well, I'm kind of me still. I've still got this free will, free mind. I'm traveling between planet to planet, but and I kind of thought, well, maybe that's how it works. Like you've got the Swarm Lord that gets dissolved back in, but it's his conscience kind of gets dissolved back into the mothership, and then it gets kind of like rebooted, downloaded back into another vessel.
And that's it. Kind of, it still is that really, because the consciousness is still there, if you like, because the consciousness is always just one joined consciousness, which is just the hive mind. So it kind of is that to a degree, but it's just they don't have that individual personality. It is just they are all interlinked, and they are all just a vessel to deliver what the hive mind wants them to do, which is ultimately just harvest that biomass, bring us more. So the ultimate gain is when they take a planet, whatever it takes, however many Tyranids has to die or what have you, they need to leave that planet as a husk and know that they've got more biomass after than they had before, because then they've grown their race and made their race stronger, and that's all they're trying to do. And that's the thing that's frightening.
Even if they, let's say for argument's sake, they go to a planet, they take heavy casualties, like stupid amount of casualties, and they've got like, I don't know, they win by 2 guys. They die by like they got a Ripper left that takes the final blow.
Yeah.
Like they've still got all that biomass. Like even though it's still not alive, they just re-harvest the bodies back into the pit, and then they just like And then I suppose in a way they have got more biomass because they've got all the dead, they've got the planet, and they just got everything else then just going forward. So at the moment, where do we see the Kraken? Where is their last positioning been spotted?
So they are little tendrils that are off the eastern front at the moment. So they are slowly but surely, they are picking at the moment on planets that are industrialized, civil planets that are unarmed or have very small forces. So that's kind of where they are from a fluff point of view at the moment. And as I said, there are now a few of them where they are, because they're so separated because of this kind of Kraken feel of like octopus kind of tendrils everywhere.
Yeah.
Some of those tendrils within themselves are getting so big that they're becoming then their own hive fleets, and that's kind of where we are now, I suppose. But yeah, they're kind of at the moment they're just on the fringes still. Nothing's really breaking through. As I said, what's very much taken over now is what's come through more the centre next to the Maelstrom, if you like, is Leviathan. Obviously, Leviathan's come through and is very much taken over everything there. So I think Kraken is not so much a big deal for things now, but they don't know where it is as far as outside of the galaxy, because communication at the moment within the fluff is at its worst, because everything is completely shadowed by the Maelstrom, and the warp is completely all over the place right now, right?
Oh yeah, well, Abaddon's got his dirty hands all over that, hasn't he? Right.
Exactly. So
a lot of rift, a lot of trouble. And this is where all those races really need to clump together and say, look, we need to sort our differences out at the moment, because if we don't, at some point,
it's going to get eaten.
Yeah, this biomass is going to be taking over everything. But there's kind of one race that the Tyranids have got no interest in.
What's that?
The Necrons.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really know the Necrons. They don't really understand them. I mean, ultimately, there's probably energy within them. I mean, they have had some kind of run-ins with them, but very infrequent. And as you said, they're the nature of the Necrons mean that they don't have the same sort of biomass that most other armies have. So yeah, they have less interest, but also they contain probably one of the biggest threats to the Tyranids, because no one's 100% sure of just how much Necrons are laying in wait. And if they were all to awaken, then that's the thing. No one knows. That's the I mean, that's always the $100 question, isn't it? Within the 40k universe, is we don't know. You've got orcs, for instance. Orcs probably are able to take over the galaxy, but they're unable to mobilize as one united force, because even with Ghazghkull, they won't all unite behind one, so they'll always infight. They're badly organized, so they'll never get their act together. But if they were, the threat is if Ghazghkull was able to mobilize everybody, then suddenly you'd have a force that could take over the world, you could take over the galaxy. And then the same with Necrons. If they all woke up, then we'd have that issue, So and then obviously the Tyranids, and who knows with the demons. I mean, with the Chaos Gods, it's very much a case of Chaos Gods are all done once they've taken over all of everybody that hates them, because that's their sole goal, really.
Well, it's kind of like GW are never going to write their rules good enough for them to take over the world, so we ain't got no worries on that.
But it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think there is. I mean, that's the bit I've always loved. That's my argument. Why, from a fluff point of view, why I think the Tyranids are by far the strongest, most scary of the bad guys of any race, is the fact that we're just potentially, this is just literally the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more potentially could just be about to completely envelop the whole of the galaxy, with there being absolutely zero thing that any of them could do.
So could we see a bigger, newer bug come on the horizon?
That'd be pretty cool. I've always wanted.
Has there ever been any pictures in the fluff wise of the Nora Queen? Of the Queen bug?
I have looked for them in the past, and I've not really seen I've seen little to no stuff on her.
Have they ever caught one?
No, they killed them. I don't think they've ever caught one.
So the Imperium had never decided to take one, study it.
If they have, I'm not aware of it. So there might be. There's people that are much more in tune with their fluff than I am, but I don't believe so, as far as I'm aware.
Drop some comments down below, if you're
let us know.
And this is great information, because me, I imagine the Nora Queen to be out of Aliens. Well, No, I don't even imagine actually think about it. I think the Hive Tyrant would be more like the Queen out of Aliens, and then the Nora Queen would be more like out of Starship Troopers, where you got like that big like what's it bug, bum bug,
Your brain bug.
the brain bug. That's it. And you got like all the little things, and I can just imagine it all being intertwined in with the actual ship itself, and it'd be like in the verse belly button inside the ship.
Maybe.
That's pretty much what it is. It's just a big belly in space, and you got the belly button. It's just sat inside the actual ship itself. But I can just imagine that possibly got no eyes at all because it doesn't need eyes, because all the eyes really is the bugs around it. That's its eyes.
Synaptic link.
Yeah, so like where you got the brain bug from like Starship Troopers, you've got it's got like what 6 eyes, 9 eyes going up.
Yeah.
This one that's completely gone, but it's got loads like little things going in there, and every now and then you'll get some ships that will bring something juicy back for the Queen. It'd be like a massive great spider web where a fly lands into it, and then you got the big old spider comes chomping down, and like every now and then like, whoa, yeah, we've got some fresh prey here, and I could just imagine it being like that. Like an ultramarine just being dropped in front of the Nora Queen, and like everything else just seals off. He's got no weapons or anything like that, and you just see this big old slug like coming over, and then just taking its little. Probably going a bit too far here.
No, it's very cool. I'm living that. I'm loving it. It's all good. All
good. But you could just like for me like, yeah, I can see them. The Queen obviously has a lot of free will in a way. But I can just see her wanting to taste the goods. I can't imagine her leaving the planet and not having something brought back up. Like
the problem is you're giving her a character. She doesn't have a character. This is the thing. Like that's it. I think that's the scariest thing, is that it's not like that. She doesn't care. She's just a thing. She's just everything is designed.
All things play with their food. Like. Spiders play with their food. Like
she just wants to be stronger. She wants to take over more. That's all she wants. That's all she cares.
Yeah, I suppose. Like fifth and sixth edition. Like was my time with the Tyranids. I used to love Tyranids. I based my Tyranids all around the alien theme.
Yeah,
and I love the whole thing with them. And I can imagine like the Gene Stealers pretty much being like the xenomorphs out of Aliens, where they're just like. Where you got like the Gene Stealer cult like creating these like civilizations going on underneath the temples. You've kind of got like the infrastructure, like the caves, as you can imagine being like the same out of Aliens, and you just see like the Marines walking down there like, oh, okay, this is a bit creepy as, and as they're walking past, you just see like a Gene Stealer's head just go straight into the back, and like you can kind of see that the Tyranids themselves kind of. Their design pattern is kind of off the Alien film in a way.
Oh, 100%. Oh, 100%. It takes a lot of inspiration from that kind of style. 100%. And like I think the personality, if you like, comes from the alien cunning, which is basically the ability to learn your enemy. And they take so. The old Tyranids, like the old range, you used to be able to see it a lot more for them. So, because basically what they do is they, so the Hive fleet, if it's killed off like an orc world, like the new like Tyranids that it makes have kind of like almost like a little bit of orc about them. And they used. So that's the thing. That's actually generally what they do. They take on, because not only they take on the like the memories, they also learn their kind of skills and abilities, and so they tend to, like in the early fluff, they very very represented a lot of the the stuff that they did, and that very much came from the alien way of thinking, because because like with an alien, like whether it's like a dog alien or a human alien, when they hatch. They take a little bit of that form from their host,
so and that's the in there. It's like and takes part of its DNA, and it kind of creates the ultimate warrior.
And that's very much in the Tyranid kind of fluff as well. So that's very much, a lot of it's been inspired from that. But yeah, so that kind of that almost cleverness is there. So like that kind of like in a battle, in like when they're kind of stalking their kind of prey, if you like, almost. They've learnt their prey, they know it, so they have like this integral intelligence that makes them really cunning and really sinister. But it's not down to a personality. It's down to how do we beat them, because we beat them through outwitting them. So there is that kind of cleverness there, but it's not through a vendetta. It's not through like we want to beat, or we want to enjoy, or we want to like, or we hate. It's just around what do we need to do to absorb, to survive, to get better. You know.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
It's scary.
But look, I think that, you know, I think that we've got some good things coming from the Kraken, and I can't wait to see what comes of them and how big they become, and what planet they go after next, and what faction they're pretty much got their sights set on. So we've definitely got a lot to go with. But I think as the show goes on now, I think this is where we call it. I think time-wise, I think we've been going on for a good old bit of time. And I think for the next one, John, I think we should talk about the Death Leaper.
Oh, nice. We could talk about Death Leaper.
I think because I think there's a good little bit of conversation going there. Because I was just about to start talking about it, and I thought, you know what, actually, that would be a really
save it for another show.
Yeah, because I think we've got some really cool information that we could talk about him, and like the way he behaves. So that's something really interesting to talk about. Anyway, look, guys and girls, if you're watching this back, really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you haven't already, please do hit the like onto the channel, hit like to the show itself, and you know, if you like what we do, please do hit the subscribe to the channel. Helps out massively. We really do appreciate it. We're trying to get to that magical number of 10,000, and if you can help us on the way for that, you know, we'd be really, really thankful. Plus, you get to keep up to date with all the cool stuff coming up from Twisted Dice. If you do like what we do and you want to support us a little bit more, we do offer a Patreon service, and if we've got the thing with the YouTube going on where you can support us through YouTube, that's going to be a thing as well very, very soon. But if you join one of the two, we will add you into our Discord chat as well, so you can come join us and chat to us live through Discord. Anyway, we're going to say no more. Thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully we're going to catch you very, very soon with some cool content from Twisted Dice. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
See you later.